Students, this is a super important lesson where we're going to be learning how to solve quadratic equations using algebra instead of graphing. Now, we've graphed quadratic equations before, and we noticed where they cross the x-axis, there was a solution to the quadratic equation. We called those the zeros. In this lesson, we're going to call them the roots, okay? The roots are going to be our solution to quadratic equations. Now, here's the thing. This is a really important skill in algebra, so make sure you're paying attention. You have to be able to solve quadratic equations without having to graph them. This will give us exact roots, and you're going to see that there's some patterns, there's some answers that the roots take on. The biggest pattern today is going to be that we're going to use the zero product property. And that is if the product of two quantities equals 0. Notice that on one side of the equal sign, in some of these I have a 0. In others I don't have a 0 yet, but I'm going to tell you we're going to get a 0 on one side. At least one of the quantities has to equal 0. And then that's what we're going to be using to. So if the product of two quantities is 0, one of the quantities has to be 0 so that they multiply to 0. That's going to be the key factor, the key property that helps us solve by factoring. And then just one other note. Did you notice that these quadratic formulas no longer have a y in them, just x? They're just one variable. And that's why we can solve them, because we're going to solve for the value that that one variable has to take on to be a solution to this equation. Now, when I say one value, actually, we're going to learn that with quadratics, there's really truly going to be two values. So this variable is going to take on specific values. That's what I should have said, specific values. All right, so let's get started. Letter A is sort of a gimme question. In letter A, we have x minus 3 times x plus 7 equals 0. Okay, now this is a trinomial that's already been factored for us, so we don't need to do the factoring ourselves. The question is, what does x have to equal to solve this equation? Well, you need to use the zero product property, because either this parenthesis or this parenthesis, either one of these two quantities, or actually both of them, have to be 0 for this to find a solution. So what makes this first quantity, x minus 3, 0? Well, x equals 3 makes x minus 3 0, because 3 minus 3 is 0. If x is 3, it doesn't matter that this one's 10, because this one's 0, so it's going to be 0 times 10 equals 0. All I need to do is figure out the value of x that makes this 0, and then the value of x that makes this 0. For the second one, it's going to be negative 7. Negative 7 plus 7 equals 0, and that solves this equation. So the answer should be x equals 3 or negative 7. Now, just pay attention to how this is structured. They just give 3 and negative 7 as the roots. I said x equals 3 or negative 7. That's a little bit more of a complete answer, but you don't have to do that. You could just write the values 3 and negative 7 for ones like these. Okay, let's go on to B. Now, B, I have to do some legwork. I have x squared plus 3x minus 18 equals 0, but I need a factor. Let's see. What are the factors of 18 that add up, negative 18, that add up to positive 3? That's going to be 6 and 3. It's going to be minus 3 plus 6. X minus 3. I'm going to put that in parentheses. X plus 6. Oh, this is almost, and notice that I'm just going to leave the right-hand side of this equation alone. The left-hand side changes to x minus 3, x plus 6. So my answers are going to be x equals 3 or x equals negative 6. It's almost the exact same question as the last one when I factor it out. There it is. All right, let's take a look at letter C. In letter C, we have 2x squared plus 13x plus 15. Okay, so this is one where I'm going to have to do some figuring, because it's going to be 2x plus something, one of the factors of 15, times x plus something, one of the factors of 15. What are the factors of 15? 3 and 5 pop into mind. So if I did 2 times 3 is 6, 6 plus 5 is 11. That's not going to do it. 2 times 5 is 10 plus 3 is 13. That'll do it. So what I need to put the 5 in a position where when I FOIL, it's going to be multiplying by the 2x. So that's going to be here. It's going to be 2x plus 3 times x plus 5. And let's just double check when I FOIL this. It's going to be 2x squared plus 10x plus 3x, so plus 13x plus 15. All right, so we've done many of those in the past. That equals 0. Now, what are my x values that are going to make this work? Well, the second one's the easiest one, so let's do that. X equals -5, or what do I multiply 2 by to make it equal -3? 2x has to equal -3. 2x equals -3. Maybe I just want to work that down below here. I need 2x to equal -3, so that it's -3 plus 3, right? I'm going to divide both sides by 2. X has to equal -3 over 2. So this is going to be x equals -5 or x equals -3 over 2. Let's see if we got that right. -3 over 2, -5, boom. All right, letter D. Letter D, I have expression on both sides. I want to make sure I get 0 on a side by itself. So this is going to be 5x squared on the left. There's going to be a lot of parts of this problem, so buckle up. 5x squared minus 20x. I'm going to subtract 10x from both sides, right? So it's going to be minus 30x plus 45 because I'm going to add 45 to both sides. So I got rid of everything on this side. This equals 0. Now, if I'm factoring this, what can I do? I could pull a 5 out of everything. 5x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. Okay. Well, that makes this a little more solvable. Now I have to find the factors of 9 that equal -6. Oh, this isn't so bad at all. 5 times x minus 3 times x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 3 squared, right? What are my roots going to be? Well, okay, so I need to figure out how to make this term equal 0 or this term equal 0. I can plug in 3, so it's 3 minus 3. That would make it 0. I can plug in the same thing for the second one. There's actually only one root for this one. It's x equals 3. We'll solve this equation. Let's just make sure I'm right. There it is, just 1, because it would have been the same for either one of the two equations. All right, on to letter E. For letter E, again, I'm going to get everything on one side. It's going to be 45x squared minus 27x equals 0. Now I'm going to solve this by factoring. Watch what happens on this one. I'm going to pull out a 9x. So it's going to be 9x times, let's see. If I pulled 9x out of the first one, it's going to be 5x minus 3 equals 0. Now here's the thing. Anytime you factor and you just have this x term out front multiplying something in parentheses, what does this x have to be to make this whole thing 0? It's not being added to anything. It's just x. So that first x can equal 0, or 5x minus 3 could equal 0. 5x minus 3. So let's just take a look at this. What I need is for 5x to equal 3. If 5x equals 3, then I'm going to have 3 minus 3, which is 0. I'm going to rearrange this. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5. X equals 3/5. If x equals 3/5, then it's going to be 5 times 3/5 is 3 minus 3 equals 0. And then it doesn't matter what this is out here. It's going to be times 0, so it's going to equal 0. So 0 or 3/5 for letter E. Let's make sure I got that right. Hold on one second. Let me make sure we got this right. This answer is wrong because this first one should be 0. It shouldn't be 3/5 twice. The answer in the book is wrong. This should be a 0. All right, letter F. By the way, I am 110% positive on that one. So even though the answer in the book says it's this, like, why would they list the same thing twice anyway? All right, F. Do I sense a difference of two squares? 25x squared is a perfect square. 16 is a perfect square, and they're being subtracted. So this is going to be 5x plus 4, 5x minus 4 equals 0. So I have to figure out when 5x plus 5x equals, let's see, negative 4. Because I need for 5x here to equal negative 4, so it's negative 4 plus 4, right? So for that to happen, I'm going to have to divide both sides. X is going to be negative 4/5 for the first part. 5 times negative 4/5 is negative 4. And then we're just going to do or. And then the second part's going to be positive 4/5 because 5 times 4/5 is positive 4. So it's 4/5 or negative 4/5. Let's see if we got that right. There it is. And then lastly, letter G, a rectangular pool has an area of 360 square feet. The length is 6 feet more than 3 times the width. Find the dimensions of the pool. This is a real world problem, and what we need to do is set this up as a real world problem, but in the context of a quadratic equation. What is the equation for the area of the pool? Well, it's just going to be length times width. The width I'm going to represent with W. The length is 6 feet more than 3 times the width, so 3W plus 6. That's going to look like this. W times 3W plus 6 equals the area, 360, length times width, okay? Next, I'm going to distribute this W. There we go. So it's going to be 3W squared plus 6W. Now I'm going to subtract 360 from both sides. And that gives me this equation here, minus 360 equals 0, okay? And now I need to find, let's see, can I simplify this a little bit? I'll bet I can pull a 3 out of this. This is going to be 3 times W squared plus 2W, because I pulled a 3 out, minus 120 equals 0. And now I have to ask myself, are there factors of negative 120 that equal 2? This seems like a really tough job, except when you think about it, 12 and 10 are factors of 120, right? So this is just going to be W plus 12, W minus 10. And then we're going to see something that happens in real world problems quite often. There is going to be a nonsense answer here. So what is the width going to be? Well, okay, so to make this equal 0, W, the width, has to equal negative 12 or 10. But let's think about this for a second. Could the width possibly be negative 12? Can the width of something be negative? That's a nonsense answer because the width of something, you can't measure something that's negative. So the width has to be this one, 10. And then what does that make the length? The length has to be 3 times the width plus 6. So 3 times 10 plus 6 is 36. The answer to this should be 10 feet by 36 feet. And that gives me that area of 360 that I was looking for. Let's see if that's the right answer. 10 feet by 36 feet. Bam, we got it. Okay, so that is how you solve quadratic equations by factoring. Make sure that the equation is set equal to 0, factor it, and then find the values of x that make it equal 0. Notice that sometimes you're going to have fractional values, sometimes you're going to have integer values. Be ready for anything. You're ready to work the problem set for next time.